Welcome, I'm Melissa Suriano, your wellness mentor, and we are headed into stage 2 of grief. And this is probably one of the most difficult stages. It's because it's emotional release. It's allowing yourself to come out of stage 1, which is shock. You're at that time when you're in shock, you are putting a cage around your emotions. You're not allowing yourself to feel emotion because you really haven't come to grips yet with what's happened, the major thing that has happened in your life. It's your body's way of protecting you and giving you the time that you need to finally come to the release of emotion, which can be a very painful, very empowering, and very scary phase of grief. And remember, grief is not just the loss of someone, it's a loss of something. It could be through divorce, it could be the loss of a friendship, a relationship with a child, a job, social status, anything that you find to be significant that you're not able to get past, that you've lost. That is grief. And in order to move through the shock period, we have to come to the releasing emotion period, which is one of the most difficult parts, because this is where we're vulnerable. This is where we may feel a sense of weakness. And that's not an easy thing to feel, especially if you're an individual that likes to be in control of your emotions and the things going on around you. When we have to release emotion and a negative emotion, that's not an easy state to be in. So some of us, such as myself, find that going through a negative emotion is private. I'm much more comfortable being in private so that I can allow myself to cry, be angry, have a pity party, where some people are very comfortable with doing that with other individuals. I, however, am not. So there isn't any right or wrong way. It's just making sure that you embrace the fact that you're going to have to go through the emotion. If you don't go through the emotional release, you're only going to make yourself sick, mentally and physically, because your body will not be able to release it. Therefore, it's going to hang on to it, and it's going to release toxins inside of your body, inside of your thought process. So it's important that we go through the emotional and the releasing of that emotion. One of the things that I did when my husband was sick and passed away is I would envision when I would run, I would envision everything trickling off of my back onto the ground that I was leaving behind. So I would run, which would bring up my endorphins, which would give me a release, but then I would also mentally release by clearing my head and thinking of all of that negativity just rolling down my back onto the ground, onto the path, and I left it behind me. And then I was able to cleanse myself and then move on to whatever came next. It's really important that you do this. It's really important that you take the time that you need to do this. Maybe journaling. For some people, journaling is huge. Being able to sit down, write the words on paper, and then come back someday and reread them. It also is a way of documenting where you were and where you have gotten to. That's why journaling is so important. Write something down on paper, throw it in a fire, whatever you need to do to be able to release the emotion and let it go. If talking to someone else helps you, whether it's a friend, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a coach, whatever helps you move through the negative emotion. But you cannot, and I can't stress enough, you cannot hang on to it. There is no time frame. So you can't say, okay, by this date, I'm going to be past this and I'm going to move on to the next step. It's not that easy because we're all different. We've all had different upbringings and we all handle emotion, negative emotion, in different ways. Some of us can get through it quicker. Some of us can't. And that's why it's also really important not to judge people by how they've moved through it, because you may move through it completely different and they may be looked at as they didn't take enough time or they took too much time. That's not for you to decide. That's for that individual to decide. All we are here to do, such as myself as a wellness mentor is to embrace you, to love you where you're at, and to just kind of keep an eye on you and make sure that you're mentally thinking ahead. Even if it's just little baby steps, you're just mentally thinking ahead to the next step, because that keeps you from getting stuck in that negative emotion. So the shock wears off, stage one. Then we come into the overwhelming feeling of this emotion, what emotion we're feeling when we go through this grief. Embracing it and discovering ways to release it. Giving yourself moments of joy, going out and working out, meditating is another huge thing. Visualizing a future, even if it's something minuscule, you have to visualize what's next. If we don't visualize what's next, we get stuck in the here and the now, and that's where we stay. So it's really important that we move through the shock, we come into the release of emotion, and we allow that release to happen. Love yourself where you're at. Don't beat yourself up if you're not where you think you should be at this point. It's okay. Love yourself, because learning to love yourself is what's going to help you get through it. And down the road, I promise you, one day you're going to look back and you're going to go, oh my gosh, the lesson that I learned, I'm so much stronger because of it. And if some crisis or some more grief comes your way, you're going to have a better handle on what's coming. And this is the big thing, you're going to be able to help somebody else who's going through exactly what you went through. And just knowing that there's somebody else and you're not alone, and that there is an end, and you are going to get through it, and you are going to be able to look back and say, wow, I survived that. Knowing somebody else has survived through it is what's going to help ease some of that fear. So embrace the people around you. Embrace people who are willing to help, who are willing to share their story. So, emotional release, it's important. Don't be afraid of it. Love yourself while you're in it. And then we'll move on to the next phase.